This series is still new, so I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to do intros for future parts. If you want me to do a last time on Xenogears small recap of the recap, I will, but I'm not going to for this time, because all I have to tell you is, this is part 2 of a recap of the plot of a game, so watch part 1, and if you've already seen part 1, make sure you saw the version that ended with Faye getting stuck in quicksand and sinking, and not the one that ended in Dazil, because I'm picking up from where the longer one left off. It's revealed that Veltal and Brigadier survived the fall into the quicksand and are just sitting pretty much okay at the floor of a cave. The pirate captain gets out and says to Faye that he won't kill him, he just wants the gear. When Faye disembarks from Veltal, the pirate is confused that he isn't the Ave soldier he thought he was, much to Faye's annoyance because that's what he'd been trying to tell him. The pirate introduces himself as Bart, and once Faye explains who he is and what he was doing there, Bart explains that they're in a stalactite cave under the desert, as the desert doesn't go very deep. They decide to call a temporary truce, at least until they can get back to the surface, and the camera cuts back to the pirate's vessel, picking up all the Ave soldiers that had survived the sinking of their sand cruiser. Citan is talking to Sigurd, the other eye-patched pirate who was concerned at Bart's rash actions before, and it seems like the two of them actually know each other from something in the past. Sigurd receives a report that they're almost done loading all the captured soldiers, and that General Maitreya's platoon is out looking for where Bart went. Citan remarks that Sigurd places a large amount of trust in Bart, to which he replies that he can certainly trust Bart to always get into trouble. He also says that he's very surprised to run into Citan here, except he refers to him by a different name, Hyuga. You're then given control of Faye and Bart as the two try to escape the cavern. This is the first gear-based dungeon in the game, as in, you're using your gears for exploration and regular battles, not just boss fights, and you have multiple mechs in the party at once. This is the first time where you really have to pay attention to and manage your HP, which you can't restore with items or ethers, and your fuel, which goes down every time you use an attack. It's not too bad this time though, because one of the regular enemy spawns in the area are repair bots that if you just sit around using the charge option, which is defend plus restore a bit of fuel, they will repair both your HP and refuel you a little bit for a few turns at least until they start attacking or run away. The two don't work together very well, and Faye has to force Bart to help him out pushing a boulder out of the way, which causes them to get into another argument, trying to figure out whose fault it was for them falling in the cavern in the first place, Bart revealing that he doesn't expect the ship to come pick him up, expecting that he'll make his way out on his own, and complaining that his gear was damaged in the fall too. He tries to get Faye to settle the score then and there, but the argument is ended when Faye just walks off. A couple rooms later, the pair run into an extremely strange sight. A house! Someone's actually living down here, and when they go to investigate, it turns out to be an old man. He shows himself to have an incredible knowledge of gears, being able to diagnose the problems with Veltal and Brigadier just based on sound alone. He also introduces himself as Balthazar, or Old Man Bell, and shows off some of the fossils he's collected. They're organized by age, and bizarrely enough, human fossils stop appearing about 10,000 years ago. Bell says that this is in direct contradiction to the evolution theory taught by the ethos, and instead posits that somehow humanity spontaneously appeared on the planet's surface at that point in time. So yes, the heavily Catholic Church-inspired ethos preaches evolution in this universe, and it's up to weird old hermits in caves to go spouting out things about humans spontaneously showing up a few thousand years ago. He then goes on to tell a story about how humanity once lived together with God in a paradise in the sky, but ate a forbidden fruit and was kicked out. They built giants to challenge God, but were annihilated when he rained his wrath down upon them, although God himself did not escape unharmed from this conflict and took paradise with him to rest under the sea. Before leaving though, he created right-hearted humans to inherit the earth, and Bal says that these are the ancestors of all humans living today. He decides to tell them how to get out of the cavern because their method of doing so would be helpful to him too, and also acts as your first gear shop with which you could buy parts to upgrade your mechs, as well as heal them and refuel them fully. You're gonna want to do both of those things, trust me, get Veltal and Brigadier as outfitted as you possibly can. After disabling the two sand sensors that are preventing Bal from opening the path forward, they return to his house. He opens the path, and Bart asks him about a legendary god gear that was used in ancient times. Bell says that he's probably talking about the Omni gear, but dismisses these ideas as mere legend, and heads outside to fix the problems to Veltal and Brigadier he'd identified before. While they wait, Faye asks Bart a bit more about the Omni gear, wondering if it's buried nearby, which Bart thinks is true. When Faye asks if one of the gears they're using could possibly be it, Bart is dismissive though, saying that the ones they've been digging up recently were only a few hundred years old, not nearly as old as the one in the legends, and that they can't be sure about where it actually is because the Ethos holds control of all the historical records from that time period. They're quickly cut off though, by Bal exclaiming that something can't be. He says that Veltal is the host for the spirit of the Slayer of God, and before Faye and Bart can process that, rudely sends them away. Interestingly enough, if you go back inside, he still will sell you gear parts, but will say that it's not a big deal because he'll just get them back when Calamity beats the two of them. Sure enough, after a couple rooms of dungeon, a puzzle where you have to get out of your gears to progress, and a save point, Faye and Bart are attacked by a hulking white gear, named Calamity, serving as this dungeon's boss fight. This is the first gear battle that can really pose a challenge to you, so make sure you fully upgraded everything at Bal's shop. And also, it's a very good idea for like the first 3 turns Bart gets to use his Wild Smile ability, because bosses aren't immune to status effects in this game, and lowering its accuracy makes it a whole lot less dangerous. Faye, on the other hand, should be doing nothing but building up attack level and spamming death blows the entire time, and also you should remember to turn both characters' boosters on, because it's not an overly long fight, so you're not going to be too worried about running out of fuel. Win the fight and Bart spies the exit, but Calamity comes back, not being out for the count yet. Faye warns Bart to get out of the way though, and when a black aura envelops Veltal, he's able to take it out with only a couple blows. After a small discussion where Faye doesn't know how he actually pulled that off, the two finally make it to the surface. It spits them out at a place where they could see Bloodivik, the capital of Ave, from a distance, and Bart talks about it a little bit, saying that it's his hometown, that he'd like to return sometime, and that there's no king there, before the two are finally picked up by his ship, the Yggdrasil. Faye reunites with Citan finally, and is also introduced to both Sigurd and the old guy named Mason, before Bart is dragged off to be scolded. You can explore the ship to your heart's content now and get used to it, you're going to be here a lot throughout the story, and once you talk to Sigurd on the bridge, it will finally arrive back at the pirate's hideout. Bart is enthusiastically welcomed back by the kids and heads off to do some maintenance on his gear, while Maison takes Faye and Citan to the dining hall to discuss things with them. Here, he reveals that Bart is actually Prince Bartholomew Fatima, rightful heir to the throne of Ave, and presumed dead 12 years ago. The country is currently under control of an evil man named Shakan, who was once a minister under Bart's father, and while there are plans to return Bart to his rightful throne, the current goal of the pirates right now is to see him grow up and to be a great man and great leader. The reason they resorted to piracy is because they were unable to excavate ruins themselves, and just by stealing things that both Ave and Kislev had dug up, they're both reducing their power while also stockpiling resources for themselves in order to stage a coup one day. The reason they haven't been able to enact any of their plans yet is because Marguerite, Bart's cousin Margie, and the great mother of Nissan, has been captured by Shakan. He imprisoned her in order to get his hands on her half of the Fatima Jasper, a treasure of the royal dynasty that, when combined with another half that Bart has in his possession, is said to point the way to a treasure capable of saving Ave in a time of crisis. Maison has no idea what the treasure actually is, but Bart barges in at this point, saying that it's got to be the Omni-Gear. He takes Faye and Citan to an information room with a screen on the floor, technology that the doctor says isn't even available in the capital, which Bart replies is thanks to Sigurd. He shows them picture scrolls from 500 years ago of the first Fatima king making a blood oath with giants and using their power to found Ave. Once the country was founded though, he sealed the giants away, and in another scroll one of them is referred to as a great treasure. Bart posits that not just Shakan and his forces, but also Gebler are looking to get their hands on this treasure, and Citan remarks that Margie needs to be rescued as soon as possible to avoid this happening. Bart asks Faye and Citan to help him out with this endeavor since both Ave and Kislev are after them, and the pirates as well, so there's a bit of a combined interest here. Citan is more than willing to do so if it pays for room and board, but Faye is annoyed that everyone tries to make him fight and storms off. A little bit of shenaniganery ensues, involving Faye sneaking into Bart's room to grab a treasure chest, which is actually just a better weapon for Bart himself, and having to hide when Bart shows up, spouting his intent to go wait for Faye under an elevator to talk to him again. Eventually though, they meet up and Bart explains why he does what he does. He reveals that Citan told him Faye's story and apologizes for asking for his help so forcefully before, and even says that he understands Faye's desire to run away from reality and escape everything sometimes, but also saying that sometimes fighting is necessary. He gets what happened at Lahan and understands Faye's guilt, but doesn't put the blame for the incident on Faye, rather the people that started the war, bringing the gears to his doorstep. Bart fights in order to deal with that kind of person, as well as eliminate all reasons for war in the first place, and while he doesn't really like fighting, he's still going to do it in order to reach that end. He also says that he's not going to try and force Faye to aid him, but he also thinks that the people who died in Lahan might never forgive him if he doesn't use the great power he has to protect others. He then sends him down to a gear mechanic in the Yggdrasil's maintenance bay and walks off. Sigurd and Satan meet him there and then take him off to observe Bart from a distance. It shows him speaking to his dad, talking about how he sees something similar in Faye when he met him, and also saying that he understands Faye wanting to run away because he really does too. Sigurd elaborates that he's lonely, there aren't many people his age around here, he's under a heavy burden, and his minders, Sigurd and Maison, can't really fulfill that role either. He then asks Faye to try and befriend Bart, and Faye, unsure of what to do yet, takes some time to think. When he heads to sleep that night though, the base is attacked and invaded by a group of 5 Gebler soldiers. Their names are Strotsky, Vance, Helmholtz, Rankin, Breuer, but when Team 4-Star played the beginning of this game, they just called them the Ginyu Force. These guys are recurring, sort of comic relief minor villains, so I'm just gonna call them that too because I don't want to say all the names every time. They enter the base's gear dock and Faye is awakened as an alarm goes off. Still not wanting to fight, he heads off with the non-combatants when Satan asks him what he's going to do. He reflects on being called the Slayer of God and wonders who he really is, and he doesn't want that kind of power. You're then thrown into a fight where Bart is taking on Strotsky's Sword Knight gear, and this is one of the coolest things about the early game. In this battle, you actually get generic NPCs as your other 2 party members. It shows that, while yeah, the party are the best fighters around there are still other people. These are just generic pirate guys, and their gears are weaker versions of Bart's that can only do regular attacks, but it shows that they are actually helping, and while they can't do as much as the protagonists, they are around and doing their best as well. Winning this fight cuts to Satan asking Maison if another unseen-before green gear is operational. He says that it works, but is still undergoing testing and is dangerous, though Sigurd lets Satan get in, saying that the gear might not even be enough for him. Satan gets in this gear, remarking that it's been 5 years since he last fought, wondering if he's still got it in him, and engages Breuer's Aegis Knight gear in battle while making a pretty nice speech about how he's going to fight in the stead of helpless people that they're trying to pick on. This is your first fight in Satan's gear Heimdall, and after winning that, he meets up with Bart, saying that the Ginyu Force is relying on performance-enhancing drugs known as Drive to become so powerful, and the 2 engage Renk and Helmholtz's Wand Knight gears together. Cut to the last member of the Force remaining, Vance and his Claw Knight threatening a couple of children, when none other than Faye and Veltal stops him. He meets up with the other 2, and finally, with a full party for the first time, they engage Spariel, Gebler's last ace in the hole. With the enemy routed, everyone regroups, and Bart finally thanks Faye for all the help he's been. Faye is still unsure of what his path is going to be, but has decided that as long as Bart is asking for his help, he'll still provide it, thinking that helping along with Bart's noble cause will help him find the right path for himself. Now that Gebler knows where the base is, the pirates decide that now is finally time to rescue Margie, putting their new allies Faye and Satan to good use. They evacuate everyone from the base onto the Yggdrasil, and you get control of the sand ship in the world map as you head to Bledavik. This is your first instance of how the game handles big cities. It can't model everything in detail, so instead you basically get a mini world map where you can walk in between various points of interest that are then modeled and navigated like a normal smaller town like Lahan or Dazil. As soon as the party arrives, a ship lands in Bledavik, and Gebler commander Ramses as well as a woman named Myong depart and start talking to Shakan. Ramses also berates another man named Vanderkam, who seems to have been in control of some Gebler forces and suffered a loss, claiming that he relies way too much on the big guns. Shakan starts talking about a ceremony for the kingdom's 500th anniversary, and also claims that he's already gotten Margie's half of the Fatima Jasper. They also discuss a bit about the records and the treasure, and Ramses and Myong try and fail to interrogate Margie in order to find the other piece of the Jasper. Shakan is also talking to himself about the ethos, and claims that he needs to find the other half of the Jasper as quickly as possible. There's a lot to explore and do in Bledavik, especially because the festival for the 500th anniversary of the kingdom is going on, but the 2 most important things are discovering a mother from the Nissan sect in the hotel who recognizes Bart, and they let her in on the plan, explaining what they're doing, and that they're going to head back out into town to try and find details. The other thing comes when you head up to Fatima Palace. Bart won't accompany Faye and Titan there because he might get recognized, but they discover that a tournament is being held tomorrow, and Citan convinces Faye to enter, as it seems that a lot of the city guards would be watching it, and if Faye competes, then Bart will have a much easier time sneaking into the castle. They play hide and seek with a kid in order to get a key to the sewers of the city, which Bart will then use to sneak into the castle. Informing the nun of their plans, they rest for the night, and in the morning, Faye and Citan head up so Faye can enter the tournament. There's a wide array of colorful characters participating, but the most surprising one is Dan, who expresses his desire to kill Faye and calls him the enemy of everyone in Lahan before the tournament finally starts. You then control Bart as he makes his way to the entrance of the sewers, and once he delves down, you're treated to a scene of Shakan presenting the tournament arena to Ramses and Myung. The former doesn't want anything to do with this and spats out a line that aged perfectly, but Myung is interested and decides to stick around, seeming to take special interest in Faye. This next segment is pretty interesting as you swap control between Faye and Bart as the former fights in the tournament and the latter works his way through the sewers. The way it works is, the amount of time you take for Faye to fight a specific tournament round is the amount of time Bart will have to explore before the next fight starts. If Bart can make it to the end of the sewers before Faye finishes up at the tournament, there will be less guards around Fatima Palace, and Bart will have a much easier time working his way through to rescue Margie. I failed this my time, but it kind of didn't matter because I just ground up Bart's death blows while I was there, and it helped him catch up in levels too. There are a bunch of items you can go for in the sewers, but it's not too big a deal. The biggest one is, if you find yourself in the fish tank in the restaurant, you can examine the treasure chest to get a good selling item, but other than that, you might as well just make your way straight there to make the next part of the dungeon easier. Nothing interesting happens to Bart while he's working his way through there, so I'll just talk about Faye's highlights. His second fight is a joke bout against a guy called Big Joe. This is your first time required to see him, but he was also around in both Lahan and Dazzle if you looked for him. There's no plot significance to him, but he's kind of a world-traveling dude who you'll meet up pretty much everywhere you go. Round 3 is against Dan, and there are two ways to go about this. The first is to actually fight him, but the second is to pretty much spam defending and healing yourself and enduring his beating as he tries to take revenge for his sister. This is the optimal solution, because if you do so, eventually Dan will get tired and Faye will keep saying that he doesn't want to fight him, so instead he'll actually give you Alice's wedding dress as something to remember your failures by before he runs away. This is a pretty good piece of armor for this time in the game, and also a permanently missable item, so you're gonna want to do it. The final match is against cloaked and masked competitor Wiseman, who won't actually attack Faye, instead dodging all of his attacks and continuously taunting him, calling him a wimp. After a few turns pass, he recognizes Faye's technique, asking him where he learned it, admonishing him for not having a reason to fight when he can't come up with one, as well as knowing his actual name, which is weird because you enter the tournament under an alias, and mentioning about his wounds that he suffered in the past. Faye's about to ask him what anything has to do with anything and how he knows this stuff, but he seems to fall under distress and leaves, making Faye the winner by default. Concurrently / directly after this, Bart plows his way through the palace, taking out any Ave soldier who attempts to stand against him, and makes it to Margie's room where he finds her safe and sound. She seems to have even been expecting him to come rescue her, and he takes her out of the room she was held in, bringing a stuffed animal she seemed to have gotten attached to. They don't make it very far though, because they almost immediately run into Ramses and Myung, very quickly getting into an argument and then a fight over both Margie and the second half of the Fatima Jasper, and it turns out that the Gebler officials do actually know Bart's true identity. This is a bit of an interesting boss because it's a one-on-one duel between Bart and Ramses, but Margie and Myung are still on the field and will periodically provide support to their allies. Rough him up a bit and Faye will come crashing in to help out, knocking Ramses down for a bit and causing him to have a flashback of a man in red demolishing a bunch of gears with his bare hands. He gets back up though, and the fight continues into a second phase, though this one is even easier than the first because you have Faye on your side now. Knock him down a second time, and he'll muse that he knows Faye's name from somewhere, though he can't place the cause. Margie uses some of her abilities to help the trio escape, and they run off into a nearby door. Ramses thinks that Faye might actually be him, and gets very concerned about this, before the words worthless and a reject flash through his mind, and he finally sends more guards out after them. The trio ended up in an elevator, and they catch up while they ride it down. It releases them outside, right next to the aerial Gebler vehicle that Ramses and Myung had arrived in. A huge amount of troops come pouring out and start chasing them, forcing them to run away again, escaping into another hallway, where Faye comes across a familiar face. Ellie is here at the Bloodivik base. And yeah, that's where I'm going to end this one. It's a bit less of a cliffhanger than last time, but I think I actually got through more hours of gameplay than I did before, which is pretty nice, honestly, because I want to get through this in a timely manner, but I don't want to, like, miss out on certain things. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this one. Leave more feedback, because I'm still fine-tuning how I'm going to do this series. And until next time, this is Luxin, signing off.